What is going on, guys? Andrew Acevedo here. And we are back with some Mets off-season content a little earlier than we all expected. Yes, the New York Mets had a disappointment and losing in the wild card round to the San Diego Padres. 101 wins for absolutely nothing. This offseason is a very pinnacle offseason for the New York Mets. They have the most free agents I think I've seen them have in a long time. Oh, it's your entire bullpen pretty much, your entire rotation, and your center fielder. And it's a lot of guys you got to replace, meaning there's a lot of spots open. Not a lot of minor league depth coming. You've seen Alvarez, you've seen Beatty. Arms are years away, so you're going to have to spend money in the offseason to make trades, sign starting pitching, which the Mets definitely need because they only have one starting pitcher under contract next season, and that being Max Scherzer. This is my dream offseason 1.0. I will probably do 2 or 3 of these. I'll do one now before anything happens. I will do a second one after all of the non-tendered and guys who are declined contracts. So it's usually another nice group of players. Guys like Kyle Schwarber a couple years ago and Carlos Rodon were non-tendered. Third one after the winter meetings, kind of cleaning up and finishing up the roster on what the Mets could look before they go into spring training. Let's kick it off by breaking down the Mets pending UFAs. And then there's some guys who have mutual options, player options, and vesting options as well, and then we'll break down some guys who I think should be non-tendered. The biggest pending UFA, it's either kind of a 1A or 1B for Mets fans. It is center fielder Brandon Nimmo, Edwin Diaz, Tyler Naquin, Trevor May, Adam Ottavino, Trevor Williams, Seth Lugo as the non-option, just straight-up UFAs. Expect the Mets to qualifying offer all 3, the big 2 of Nimmo and Diaz, and then qualifying offer as well to guys who have options, which I will break down now, will be Jacob deGrom. We all expect to opt out of his big league contract. Then we go to Chris Bassett, which has a $19 million mutual option that they gave him when they solved his arbitration case. You have Carlos Carrasco, and you have Taijuan Walker with his player option, as well as Michael Givens with a mutual option as well, and Dan Vogelbach with a team option. You look at that list, there's a lot of guys, there's a lot of talent, there's some big pieces. 4 out of 5 of our starting rotation just out there. Brandon Nimmo, Edwin Diaz, and our entire bullpen. Some guys that I will non-tender is 2 guys, pretty obvious names you would expect, being Dom Smith and Darren Ruff. Those guys do not belong in this organization again. So with all the free agents, now let's start bringing in talent to the New York Mets. Of the Mets' current free agents, who am I bringing back? And you see it, there is an elephant in the room, which I will break down right now, and that is Jacob deGrom is not re-signed. How I see the Jacob deGrom situation, a lot of Mets fans, or a majority of Mets fans, are like, hey, give him a blank check. Whatever. There was the Mets fans to say, hey, he's not been dependable the last couple of years. Should we really pay $50 million to $47 to $50 million a year, especially when Scherzer, we paid Scherzer $43. Do you really want to lock up $90 million to your top 2 starters where you had deGrom, who pitched well in the wild card, did not pitch well against the Braves, and then Scherzer, who just sucked in both? Do you really want to lock up that much money to 2 pitchers, both going to be over 35 years old? Scherzer's case pushing 40. That's maybe not the most smart decision, especially when you have to sign for other starting pitchers. And I get it. If the Mets were in a better situation where there was more comfortability in the rotation and say, hey, you got 3 to 4 guys locked down when you only need 2 pitchers. But the Mets situation, they need to sign 4. How I see it, you got to pick 2 out of the 3, or just give Jake $50 million, or you can give $50 million combined for Edwin Diaz and Brandon Nimmo, like I do. The talent of Jacob deGrom, you're not going to be able to replace. Jacob deGrom is a luxury to give him $50 million. The Mets are a flawed roster, as we saw, even though they won 101 games. They are not a perfect organization, not a perfect team. If this team was built properly and it didn't have as many holes, I would feel way more confident giving Jacob deGrom $50 million, being the ace of this rotation. I just don't think it makes the most sense for the Mets, especially when they have so many other holes and needs in the rotation, in the bullpen. If you're not re-signing Brandon Nimmo, you need to find a center fielder. You kind of need some corner outfielders. You still need a DH. Going back to who is brought back of the Mets free agency, like I said, you gave Brandon Nimmo a 5-year deal, $110 million of AAV of $22 million. I could expect him getting a little bit more. What I would give, I'm not projecting. So they've already showed some interest bringing him back, and potentially if the price isn't right, I expect that price to be anywhere from the $20 to $27 million range for Brandon Nimmo AAV-wise. And he's just trying to find the production to replace a top 5 center fielder. It's extremely hard, and it would cost a lot of prospect capital, which the Mets do not really have. The Mets farm system is not there yet. Number 2, Edwin Diaz. Me and Metsfan have been a big proponent of, we don't like giving multi-year deals to relievers. I do believe in not paying relievers term. I don't really care about AAV to an extent. It's, for me, the term that I'm scared of giving to relievers. So I did give Evan Diaz a 4-year, $88 million deal. He breaks the AAV record for a reliever. He most money given to a reliever, topping the Liam Hendricks contract signed a couple years ago. But of course, if it's my contract, there's some options in it. It's 2 guaranteed years of $44 million. And then the third year, Diaz will have a player option. If he does not pick that up, the fourth year becomes a team option for the Mets because, again, it gives Diaz the AAV record for a reliever and gives him the biggest contract on paper. But if this does go south, both sides can get out of it in different years. And then I do expect Chris Bassett's $19 million option to be picked up by the Mets. I think both sides will agree Bassett will come on. The Mets really cannot afford to lose production and innings out of the rotation. I think for a reason they gave Chris Bassett that $19 million option, or potentially getting if he says no, the Mets are going to qualify. Or so again, the qualifying offer is back this year. I think this should be the last year of the qualifying offer. So if worst case you qualify, you get a draft pick. A lot of free agents. All the bullpen is gone. Tyler Naquin and Carlos Carrasco and Taijuan Walker all walk. I do pick up Dan Vogelbach's option at $1.5 million. It's just a good quality bench guy you can stick on the bench. Again, maybe you can put him on waivers and see if you can stick him down in the minor leagues. Let's get to the fun part, which again, this is what's fun about this video, is what offseason moves I would do. And let's start with a couple of trades. I made 2 trades. I didn't go out and go crazy with the headliner, which I don't think Mets fans are going to love. I didn't have that sexy headliner so most Mets fans are looking for. I did not. I try to take the roster we have right now and fill the holes and improve them. Let's start off with a big elephant in the room, and it is James McCann. Obviously, Francisco Alvarez is here, and opening day in spring training, it is his job to take. You're not carrying 3 catchers, and James McCann has a horrific contract, 2 years at $24 million, for a 32-year-old catcher who's been god-awful. The easiest way to get rid of it is cut him, but that's not really fun. This is a trade that could work, but most likely it's not going to happen, but it's a fun idea. You call up the Chicago White Sox. Obviously, Yasmani Grandal was bad-lived last year. Lucas Giolito is kind of the only reason this makes sense, because obviously Dylan Cease for the White Sox had a great year in the Cy Young conversation, but Lucas Giolito was their original ace. He struggled mightily ever since James McCann has left Chicago. Could James McCann fix Lucas Giolito again? So, the Chicago White Sox have something the Mets desperately need, and that is a abundance of left-handed pitching in their bullpen. They have guys like Garrett Crochet, they acquired Jake Diekman, and they have Aaron Bump, who is my main target, making $4 million, the left-handed reliever from the White Sox, who had a very good year, but is coming off an injury, which is something that can bring his value down. I've thrown a hypothetical that the New York Mets would acquire left-handed reliever Aaron Bummer, exchange for the rest of the James McCann contract and 2 top 20 pitching prospects. Because yes, if you're going to move the James McCann contract in any type of trade, you are going to have to give up prospect capital. And the 2 names are Matt Allen and Eric Orr, the number 10 prospect, and Matt Allen, and obviously Eric Orr is the 19th overall prospect in the Mets system. Matt Allen is a very unique prospect. He has all the buzz of being a big overslot money he has crazy upside. The only problem with Matt Allen is he's never healthy. The Mets cannot continue to lean on this guy. He can be a top of the rotation guy. The problem is he's never been able to pitch in minor league baseball. And they actually start his career, I believe he only has 36 innings in the minor leagues. You could add another prospect if it makes you sleep well at night. You could definitely add another prospect, but just the base of Matt Allen, Eric Orr, James McCann for Aaron Bummer can solve one of the Mets' issues in getting a lefty in their bullpen. This other trade is a trade that I like very much, and it makes sense for the Mets, and it makes sense for the Milwaukee Brewers. And the Mets, I believe, need to add some outfield depth. You look at a guy like Mark Canha, who gave us great production as our left fielder. Problem is he's getting a little older and could benefit coming off the bench or playing a couple days, only maybe 2 to 3 times a week compared to playing every single day, which Mark Canha had to. And the other thing, fixing the Mets' problem is they need to add some more power, and I try to do that in this video. I call the Milwaukee Brewers, and I have the Mets acquiring corner outfielder, slugger Hunter Renfroe, making 1 year left on his deal at $10 million. In exchange, I send the Milwaukee Brewers Mark Vientos. Yes, I made this clear on multiple trade deadline coverage that me and Metsfan and Mets Weekly did. I'm willing to trade Mark Vientos. They should have done it. They should have went and traded him for either Trey Man. He's not a piece the Mets need, especially he does not play a position. The Mets need to get more flexible here with pitching for the prospects in general, but with the team. They need more flexibility, and they can't carry a guy like Mark Vientos if he's just going to hit, especially with the Mets DH situation, which I will figure out. I want to make that DH position a guy where I want a lead hitter there, but I want to still be able to, if I bring in a guy, he can play additional positions so I can give Pete a day off. I can give Lindor a day off, get him off his feet for the day, and give him like a half a day off. Why do the Brewers do this? Obviously, they're a small market team. Hunter Renfroe will walk at the end of the year at $10 million. That's $10 million off their payroll. That maybe, obviously, that David Stearns is leaving and potentially the team being up for sale, cutting a little bit of salary. And this team does need a shakeup, obviously choking away the National League Central to the St. Louis Cardinals and not getting into the playoffs, choking against the Miami Marlins to not make that third wildcard spot. Mark Vientos pretty much is the definition of what the Milwaukee Brewers love in their hitters. They love guys that just hit home runs and don't really care about strikeouts or whatever. They like their sluggers. And obviously, you could stick Mark Vientos at third base. They don't really have a quality third baseman, but also providing Hunter Renfroe into this lineup, it gives this team a secondary bopper in this lineup. And I do sign one more in this lineup because the Mets are so table set happy with guys who can hit singles and draw walks. I'm looking for secondary guys who can drive the ball out of the ballpark in the 6, 7, 8 hole in this lineup. And Hunter Renfroe can do that. If you look at his numbers last season, 29 homers, 72 RBIs. Again, that's what I want to put in this lineup. Still had an on-base percentage, 315, a 492 slugging, 807 OPS. This is the kind of bat I want to add in this lineup. Hit him 6th in the lineup. Add the second tier of power that this lineup desperately needed that they didn't go out and get at the trade deadline. Now let's fill in the rest of the team in the free agent market. And let's start with pitching because that's obviously the biggest thing for the Mets. They're losing Jacob deGrom. They're losing Taijuan Walker. They're losing Carlos Carrasco. Who is coming in? The free agent class for starting pitching is very unique. You have your top-end guys, your Kershaws, your Justin Verlanders, if Jacob deGrom were to opt out. You have that crew. And then you have a crew underneath it. There's one other guy, which is Carlos Rodon, being kind of that in their prime stud. And then you have, after those guys, a lot of innings eaters, a lot of quality, high upside, mid-30s guys who can give you quality innings. And I think that's, for me, out of the 4 and the 5 spot, the only guy who can replace Jacob deGrom to an extent is Carlos Rodon, a left-handed fireballer. I wasn't the biggest fan. For his career, kind of injury-prone, had a great year last year. I kind of wanted to see him duplicated over a second year, and he did, and down in San Francisco. The first contract I'm giving Carlos Rodon is a 4-year, $92 million deal, giving him an AAV of $23 million. What you're paying Jacob deGrom, I'm paying 3 guys. A little more for 3 than I'll pay for Jake. Again, give me the depth because I would rather have 5 quality arms than have the dominant 1-2, and then the back half of the rotation is a bunch of question marks or, I want a little more stability in that rotation. Bassett in the 3. So now you got to fill the 4 and the 5 starters, and I bring in 2 veterans in that spot, and that being Nathan Eovaldi for a 2-year, $34 million deal, so $17 million, and Sean Manaea on a 2-year, $20 million deal. A big thing with me is making starts, and Rodon last year, 31 starts, a 14-8 record, 2.88 ERA, 170 innings pitched, a 237 strikeouts, and a FIP of 2.5. Fangraphs WAR accumulated of 6.2. And then you go to the 4 and 5, Eovaldi and Manaea. Obviously, last year, Eovaldi was hurt in 20 starts, 6-3, 3.87 ERA and 109 innings, 103 strikeouts, made 20 starts. But the year before that, 32 starts, 11-9, a 3.75 ERA and 182 innings, 82 and a third innings with 195 strikeouts. That's what I kind of want as my 4 and 5. Give me a sub-4 ERA, which you guys eat in some innings. And then Sean Manaea, a 30-year-old left-handed pitcher. So you would add 2 lefties to this rotation, which the Mets have not had a quality lefty in a while in this rotation. Manaea, this year with San Diego, not the greatest of year, 30 starts, though. We like 30 starts. An 8-9 record, a 4.96 ERA, which the ERA is a little high. The FIP at 4.35, 156 strikeouts. But then the year before that in Oakland, made 32 starts, 179, and a third innings pitch, a 3.91 ERA with an 11-10 record. That's a quality number 5 stars. The Mets kind of a different look. We've got Scherzer and Rondon being the straight fireballers. And you've got Bassett throwing a bunch of junk, Eovaldi as well, and then you got Sean Manaea from the left side throwing different type of look for the Mets. Those are the free agents on the starting pitcher side. We're not done. We'll go to the bats because, again, we have not addressed the designated hitter situation. Obviously, the Dan Vogelbach and Darren Ruff experiment did not work, so you have to be able to bring in a DH you can get actual production from. And technically, you could say Mark Cannon can be a platoon with the first guy, which is the big bat I'm getting, and that is Jock Peterson on a 3-year, $45 million deal. Jock's a guy which, again, has plenty of postseason experience, which this team did not have besides Max Scherzer. You bring in a guy who's won in L.A., who's won in Atlanta. He's just one of these players that has the postseason experience, absolutely murders the baseball. He would be my left-handed DH. He'd be my DH most days. Again, to give some ABs to Mark Canha, maybe he becomes the lefty DH, even though we know he did not have the greatest numbers against lefties. But last year, Jock, playing with the San Francisco Giants, 274 BA. I believe that's a career high for him, an 874 OPS, 23 homers, 70 RBIs, and 134 games played with a 144 WRC+. In the year before that, with the Cubs in Atlanta, 18 homers, 61 RBIs, a 338 batting average, a 310 on base, 422 slug, a 736 OPS with a 97 WRC+. But again, Jock's one of these guys who's just going to hit the ball out of the ballpark. That's what he does. Adds more power. And if you look at the lineup, now you have, in this scenario, you have two big boppers you can put after Pete Alonso, because we're keeping that top four of Nimmo, Marte, Lindor, Alonso, and McNeil in a sense. You keep those five. Now you add two boppers in this lineup who still can draw you some walks and still are patient enough hitters that will draw some walks, but you can provide more power in the bottom of your lineup. A kind of utility role. I really wish Kike Hernandez did not sign the extension, because this is the kind of role I want. I'm bringing back Brandon Drury. He should never have left the Mets. He played so well for the Mets, and obviously as the Mets desperately needing a lefty killer, but also kind of utility guy. Can play second, can play third, can play left field. I want to bring the bench, and that's the main thing. He's kind of my key bench piece against left-handed pitching, getting some ABs. I wanted to make the bench more flexible, especially we've seen with the Mets. Their bench has been so, especially in the second half, when they had Vogelbach, they had Ruff, and they had Vientos on the roster. There's no positional flexibility at all. You got three guys who are just known to hitting. I wanted to make that bench more flexible, and especially now, who I have the lineup set up, you have two guys who, for their careers, can play all over the place. Now you've got, a quality fourth outfielder, and now Mark Canha would move to the bench. Now you're starting to see a very good bench with depth with the lineup. So Drury's brought in 2 years, $14 million, $7 million deal. Then we go to the bullpen. Obviously, we brought back Edwin Diaz. We kind of need a new bridge. May, Ottavino, and Lugo, and Joely Rodriguez, Michael Gibbons are all gone. Now, what does the bullpen look like? Now, we brought in Aaron Bummer as a number one lefty. In this case, second, or main lefty, because bringing in Andrew Chafin. I do expect Andrew Chafin to opt out of his 1 year, $6.5 million option. One, the Tigers suck, and two, he can get more money, and I do pay him. You do give him a raise at 1 year, $9 million. I do bring in David Robertson, a guy the Mets had a lot of interest in at the trade deadline. I get he's a 37. I'm bringing in vets, which I know some people would prefer this team to go young. My only thing, if they want a younger bullpen, you really don't have the arms ready. Guys like Calvin Ziegler, Dominic Hamill, those guys aren't ready. They're probably 2 years away to start seeing those guys in the bullpen. So for me, the Mets have to go vets now to continue let them develop arms, give them some time to develop all 1 year deals naturally through the system, and they will come, but they're just not ready yet. And then I bring in Chris Martin on a 1 year, $6 million deal. He's a veteran. He's pitched everywhere. A guy who's going to get a lot of ground balls. Obviously, now the Dodgers brought him in, so you knew he had talent when the Dodgers are picking him up, filling the new Seth Lugo role. And now you have Andrew Chafin as well, kind of being your seventh inning guy. Also now having Aaron Bummer, he doesn't have to be your main lefty. You can use Chafin as a setup man and have Bummer as your kind of matchup lefty in any order. And it gives Buck Showalter more options. Now, what does the 26-man roster look post all these moves? Let's start with the lineup. And obviously, we're going to keep the top four the same. That was the most productive version of the New York Mets lineup, that being Brandon Nimmo leading it off in center field, Starling Marte batting second and playing right field, Francisco Lindor batting third and playing shortstop, and Pete Alonso playing first base and batting cleanup. I have Jock Peterson batting behind Pete Alonso because we've made it clear the power source. It has to be someone batting behind Pete that strikes fear in the opponent, and Jock Peterson does do that, so Jock would hit fifth as your designated hitter. Batting sixth in this lineup would be Hunter Renfroe, because you want to go back-to-back lefties, play left field. Then you have the batting champion, Jeff McNeil, playing second base and batting seventh, because I do like Jeff at the bottom of the lineup. And then we go to the two kids, and this is where the Mets have to trust their kids here, because you're spending a lot of money bringing in talent in the pitching, especially bringing in offensive talent in Renfroe and Jock with Drury, but you had to spend a lot of money in pitching to rebuild your rotation, to rebuild your bullpen. You need to trust the kids, and that being Francisco Alvarez playing catcher and batting eighth, and Brett Beatty becoming the full-time everyday third base. This bench, everyone besides Eduardo Escobar can play multiple positions and gives you the flexibility, not holding a guy like Dan Vogelbach, Darren Ruff, and Mark Vientos, where you have three guys who just hit. You make those guys more valuable with their defensive mobility. Go to the pitching. Obviously, still have Max Scherzer in the 1 spot as the ace. Carlos Rodon slides into the Jake spot as the number 2. Obviously, Chris Bassett stays in his number 3 starter role. Nathan Eovaldi and Sean Manaea become the new rotation for the New York Mets. Then you go to the bullpen. Again, is revamped. That is a veteran core again, but obviously, on top, Edwin Diaz being the closer that he is. Set up the new bridge to him is now David Robertson, Andrew Chafin, Chris Martin. Then you've got, obviously, Aaron Bummer as your second. Kind of can be used early in games, lefty-lefty matchup. I used Tyler McGill is going to be a full-time reliever in my world. He should be. He's, again, great out of the pen. But telling him to give him a full offseason of, hey, Tyler, you're a reliever, warm up and have a full spring training as a reliever, I do think he can even be a very good reliever. Bryce Montez de Oca is a guy I love. You saw him before he got injured. He has elite stuff. He does have a walk problem, but again, he's young. Again, cost controllable bullpen arms that I think he has all the potential and all the stuff to be a high leverage arm in the future. As early as this year, but again, I would love him making the opening day roster as kind of that second tier of reliever, a blowout. And then Drew Smith, just as here because, again, cost-effective, last man in the pen type of reliever. Again, don't expect them. It gives you the ability at the trade deadline if you want to bring in some more relievers at the trade deadline. You have 2 open spots to begin with, but you have 2 young guys holding them right now with the ability to decide more in DeOca's case than Drew Smith. We know what Drew Smith is, but he still showed you some appearances that he can be an average reliever, and that's kind of what he is in this scene. So that is the 1.0 dream offseason. Are you mad there's no Jacob deGrom? There's no Aaron Judge level big market free agency that I went more on the margins and trying to be cost effective and filling the holes that this team had with some power production, Jock and Renfroe? Would you prefer them to go all out and go out and trade Brian? If you let Nemo walk and you re-sign DeGrom, are you trading for Brian Renfroe? Leave those all down in the comment section down below. Be sure to drop a like on this video for the first edition of this dream offseason. The second one will come out after the World Series and after kind of the non-tenders from other teams to get a new replenished of people on the market. Be sure to check out Empire Sports Media for all of your New York sports news, not just Mets, Giants, Yankees, Knicks, all of that. Be sure to check out and subscribe to the Mets Weekly ESM channel. We're pumping out 3 to 5 videos a week as of now. Every Thursday night, the live show where we talk all the rumors and speculation in the Mets world. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.